What's up, guys? I'm EJ. I'm joined by Kendall for another edition of our virtual NBA Draft War Room. Kendall, here we're talking about your beloved Boston Celtics. I know you got a lot of ideas, a lot of opinions. It should be a good video for the Celtics fans out there, considering you got one of your own talking about draft strategy here. Kendall, the Celtics, you know, we're recording this. They're still in the postseason, so keep that in mind. But they finished with a record of 48-24. They did get past first round, defeat the Philadelphia 76ers. They own right now picks number 14, which came via Memphis. They also have 26, 30, and 47.
What else is new?
Yeah, Danny Ainge with a million picks. Yeah, exactly. It's death taxes, and Celtics have multiple first round picks. Free agents this year. Gordon Hayward, who will not be a free agent because he has a $34 million player option. He will 100% take that.
After that religious injury, no way he's opting out.
Yeah, no, he's gonna take that exactly. So Gordon Hayward, he will be on the team though. He does have a player option in case something obscene happens that we can't foresee. But Enes Kanter, $5 million player option. I don't know what's gonna happen with that. I can see him declining. Maybe think he can get more. But you got Wanamaker, who's a free agent, and then you got two guys on 1 year, two-way deals, Taco Fall and Tremont Waters. Going into this offseason, Kendall, the Celtics are an interesting team because, we'll see how they end up shaking out in this postseason, but it doesn't change the fact that they still need size and their and interior scoring and interior defense that's been an Achilles heel for the Celtics all season. And I think that backcourt scoring as well. Obviously Wanamaker is a free agent. He played well for the Celtics. I don't know what the interest is in bringing him back, but you would think that you can get an upgrade. I think they definitely kind of missed that kind of backcourt scoring option. Once Terry Rozier left, and they've been kind of stuck with Wanamaker all year. How do you look at the Celtics heading into this draft in this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the size factor. The size factor is obviously a thing. Daniel Tice, I think, has been better than I think they expected he would be when they signed him, over from Europe. I think, we kind of just were like, I guess he's got to replace Al Horford, but now he's really working with the jump shot. We saw in the Philly series he's able to hold his own with Joel Embiid, so I don't know if it's the immediate need that, I think we thought it could be. With that being said, there's still obviously plenty of room to upgrade at the 5 position. So that's obviously something to take into consideration. But they also have a lot of bigs, behind Daniel Tice, Robert Williams, who they like, and Vincent Poirier, another guy from France that they brought in. Taco, you mentioned, is a guy who's a two-way guy, and Grant Williams. But backcourt scoring, to me, you mentioned that, and just depth at the point guard position. The one guy you mentioned that you didn't mention that I think was supposed to really fit into this equation for the Celtics that really hasn't was Carson Edwards.
For sure.
Like, that pick last year was supposed to be the replacement for Terry Rozier, and they thought, all right, maybe not from day one he'll come in and be a guy that could be, electric, but they figured by the end of the season he would be a guy that could get rotation minutes. And for a lot of this bubble, as we've seen, he's still virtually unplayable.
Yeah, exactly.
So that is the concern for the Celtics, is how confident are you in Carson Edwards' development? He was a guy that was, a junior in college anyway, so he was a little older than your typical, lottery pick type guy. But, he's an older player. He's smaller. If you feel like Carson Edwards can be your point guard of the future, then you're fine at that position. If you don't, then I think they have to seriously consider drafting another point guard, which isn't what I think they expected after last year's drafting 2 point guards, but that's where we're at now. And, it'll be interesting. There are plenty of point guards in this draft. So the Celtics, if they are looking at a point guard, have plenty of options, which obviously we'll get to in this video.
And that's funny you mentioned that, because I do agree that I think point guard is a position they have to target. I think that 14 is going to be a weird spot for point guards. I feel like that's going to be, obviously too late to get kind of maybe, the guys that aren't LaMelo Ball, Killian Hayes, Tyrese Halliburton. But it might be too early to begin with some of the other guys, for some of them that you may be talking about, that maybe guys who you see more in the 20 range or 25 range. So I'm wondering if that's going to be the spot where you find your point guard. Do you get it later in the first round? When we look at that pick at number 14, length is a huge issue for the Celtics, as we did talk about. The problem though is I don't know if there's necessarily a center per se that fits the spot at 14 either. But I think a guy that I just think fits Brad Stevens and fits what the Celtics like to do would be Precious Achiuwa, a guy you're very familiar with the Memphis Tigers.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, and I'm sure that'd be great. We got to speak to him, and now he played for the Memphis Tigers, and now I would say I think the Celtics should consider taking a look at him. And just I think he's a mold of clay offensively. I think that we saw him play some 5 at Memphis, way more 5 than I think anyone anticipated, and he did a great job playing that position. But I think that the Pascal Siakam comparisons make sense for a lot of people, and you could definitely see him being like a small ball forward.
Remember, we talked to Cody Topper, assistant at Memphis, and he compared Precious Achiuwa to Bam Adebayo and Montrezl Harrell. He coached Montrezl Harrell in the G League, so it's those are obviously lofty comparisons. But you mentioned Pascal Siakam, but I think that is if that's a guy that you feel like he could turn into, then the Celtics, they would certainly use a guy like that. So and that would fit perfectly with what they do.
Yeah, because the Celtics right now, they have wing guys that are defenders, but also are primary scorers and primary guys who are on the perimeter. Whether it be Tatum, Brown, or Hayward, those guys have had to log minutes at the 4. And in this NBA, they're going to have to log minutes at the 4. But if they can get a guy who can come in off the bench, who could be more comfortable in that position, and actually hold his own at the 4, and even get into small ball 5, Precious I think makes the most sense with that. And he can give you some rim protection. He can guard 4 positions to me. I think he can guard 5, 4, 3, and 2. And again, for a guy who's 6'9", he's extremely long, very long arms. I think that he would make a lot of sense at 14. He was the guy I would target if I was Boston.
Yeah, look, I think Precious. That would be a great pick. I love Precious Achiuwa. It's not a guarantee he'll be there, but it's not out of the question. It's certainly a possibility. I think to me, it really just goes back to where do you feel the need is at. And I think Precious Achiuwa, while he'd be an excellent fit and does seem like a Danny Ainge kind of guy, 5-star coming out of high school, great physical tools. You feel like you can kind of coach him up on some of the other skills that he could develop. And could he be he wouldn't play like Jaylen Brown, but could he be a Jaylen Brown kind of project for Brad Stevens and Danny Ainge? I could certainly see that. And again, the switchability, the Celtics love to switch all 5 positions, and like you said, Precious Achiuwa can do that. So, yeah, I think he'd be an excellent fit in Boston. But for me, I think at 14, I think the primary need is at that point guard position. You mentioned it is at an awkward spot. If you could trade up, they certainly have the assets to trade up. I would also consider trading up if someone like James Wiseman fell, personally, if you're talking about really filling that 5 spot. If Wiseman was available at like 8 or 9, which I don't think he will be, but there was some talk of some people don't have him in the top 10. I would give everything in this draft to get James Wiseman.
And we've heard stories about Danny Ainge being extremely aggressive to move up for guys that he really likes.
Right. So that would be one of the things I certainly would talk about. But assuming they stay at 14, I think the guy that they should look at primarily is Cole Anthony. And, I understand. Like, first of all, the other thing we didn't mention with the backcourt need is Kemba Walker, while he is signed long-term, we saw a lot of injuries this year. And
yes, we did.
The knee injury is a little bit of a concern. He ended the season with a knee injury that was plaguing him in terms of the end of the restart. And when the season resumed, he still was on minutes restriction because of the knee injury. So that was a little alarming for a lot of Celtics fans and probably for the front office. So I think point guard has become even maybe a bigger need than it was when the season stopped. And I feel like if you're talking about a point guard, I think the Celtics have a particular kind of guard that fits what they like to do. And it's typically a guy that can shoot and a guy that can create pressure in the pick and roll. And I think that's something that Cole Anthony can do. And I think when you look at also the Danny Ainge profile of point guards, he typically likes a guy that's more athletic. A guy that can get to the basket, a guy with elite athleticism. We've talked about, or we've seen in years past, like he was a big fan of Dennis Smith. I remember when the Celtics had the number one pick in the draft, they worked out Dennis Smith to possibly go number one, and people looked at that. I was like, what? Now, obviously, they also thought about trading down, but I think Danny Ainge, first of all, he lives in his own head in terms of who he likes, but like I think he liked a guy like Dennis Smith, who's like a kind of coming out of college, a better version of what Terry Rozier is, and you know Cole Anthony fits that Dennis Smith, Terry Rozier kind of archetype. And the other part of him that fits what the Boston Celtics do in terms of drafting is the guy with a 5-star all-world guy coming out of high school. We've seen last year he took a flyer on Romeo Langford,
Yeah.
who also had a similar profile to Cole Anthony. 5-star all-world guy coming out of high school who had injuries that some people will make excuses for why he struggled in his 1 year at college. And I think that Cole Anthony has that similar profile and also similar to Romeo Langford. Not a whole lot of talent around him. So you kind of look at it and you say maybe he wasn't in the best fit. I think Cole Anthony in Boston playing off of Tatum, Brown, Kemba, Smart, Hayward, like if he can't succeed there, like it's the opposite of the North Carolina situation. So the only concern is that Cole Anthony, his whole entire basketball life, has been the center of everything. Can he fit and be a piece for the Celtics team? That would be my only concern. But look, he's a rookie. If he's not drafted in the top 10, you're going to have to be a piece for any team you go to. So why not be with one of the best programs in the league? If Cole Anthony's not available, I think Tyrese Maxey kind of gives you an approximation of what Cole Anthony kind of gives you. And I think Tyrese Maxey, another guy, big guy coming out of high school, good athlete, plays both ends of the floor, I think even better than Cole Anthony does. Can shoot the basketball. Texas guy like Marcus Smart. I think that could be an interesting fit as well. But I would definitely lean guard for the Celtics at 14, and those are the two guys that I would certainly look at.
Maxey is just a hooper, man. He's not a pro yet, but he's a professional bucket getter, as far as I'm concerned. So I could definitely see the Maxey fit. He can play both guard positions, and if with Marcus Smart, coming in that second unit, I think they make a great fit together because both guys can kind of play point or play off the ball depending on the situation. So I like Maxey, and I get Cole Anthony too. The reason why I get both of those picks for 14 and not going size is they kind of have a lot of small guys that are kind of lost in the shuffle a little bit when you consider if they bring back Waters and then if you talk about obviously Edwards, like getting a guy later in the draft, is he just another guy in the mix, a small guy who's trying to figure it out in the NBA? Or do you kind of need to get kind of more of a quote-unquote blue chip type guy who you have more confidence in that can come in and play immediately? I think some of the reason why I would go size first is because I think that I got to have a little bit of confidence that maybe Carson Edwards or Waters can figure it out and be that second guard by next year. But look, we watched them this year. I totally understand not having that confidence to be like, no, we got to make sure we can secure this position. And we're going to have to get a guy who we have very, very good confidence in will be an NBA player. I think Anthony and Maxey are indeed certainly NBA players. But if we're going later in the draft, and I said I would target someone like Precious Achiuwa, if you're going to go with a guard with one of those other picks later in the first round, the guy I looked at was Cassius Winston. Because I think that he's a guy that, while, again, you are taking a guy who's later in the draft, certainly question marks about how he translates to the NBA, but I know he can come in and run a team. I feel like even if he's not a great player, I feel like I can at least get another Brad Wanamaker. I'd be surprised if he comes in and you can't play him the way you've had issues with Carson Edwards. Defense is going to be a problem. He's not the most athletic guy, but he's extremely smart. He knows how to run a team. And I think that what I saw from Michigan State, even if there wasn't as much growth as I would have liked to have seen from junior to senior year, Michigan State runs a lot of NBA-style offense in the half court. So I feel like the stuff I've seen Winston do, in theory, should translate if he's able to adjust to the size and speed. They run a lot of pick and roll. He's excellent in pick and roll. He makes great reads, whether it be whether to shoot, whether to pass. And he's a leader. And I think this is a locker room that the locker room is surprisingly much younger than people would expect, but they're very mature. So I I don't think that you have an issue with Maxey and Cole. 'Cause I think those guys are actually mature beyond their years. But like, I feel like Winston comes in and like he fits right in with these like young old guys. You know what I'm saying? So you know, because like, you know, Tatum and Brown and all those guys, they're young, but they act like 10-year veterans. And
Right.
to me, Winston was a college player who acted like a 10-year veteran in the NBA. So I think he fits right in. So if I was looking at a guy and with one of those later picks, 26 maybe high. I think 30 makes more sense. I think Winston would be a guy I would look at. And then I think you can go size with two of these three picks in the top 30. So I think that Jalen Smith, I've seen him all over the place. I've seen him as high as 14. I've seen him as, you know, late in the first round. So I don't know where exactly he fits, but if somehow he falls, I think that he's potentially one of the steals of this draft. He seems to be a Brad Stevens, just like perfect fit, like size, skill combination.
Right.
Just
A little bit of Miles Turner in there.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. Not as tall,
Yeah.
but almost. You know, he's 6'10", so you know about an inch or two we're talking about. But yeah, he can shoot, can pass, he can defend the rim a little bit. He can play 4 and 5. And another guy, I think, high level character. So another guy I think fits right into Boston locker room. And if you really want to go really big, if Boston really feels like they need a big man, then Udoka Azubuike, I think from Kansas, could also be in play with one of those picks.
Yeah, I mean, if the Celtics don't go with a point guard at 14, I think there's plenty of point guards at 27. I think one of these guys is going to drop. I mean, I love Tyrell Terry. I think Tyrell Terry could be in the mix for Boston at 14 because they definitely need shooting. And he's been off the charts in terms of his his basketball IQ, according to reports. So, like that, I mean, he could obviously be a great fit there. He seems like he's going to go in between 14 and 27. So I don't know if they're going to be high enough on him to draft him at 14, but 27 if he's there, obviously. But you know, I can see RJ Hampton being a good fit if he's still there. You know, Nico Mannion, like Theo Maledon. Like if one of those guys is there, I think the Celtics. If you told me one of those guys were there, then I'd feel much better about drafting a big at 14 if that guy is there that you like. If we're assuming that they do get the point guard at 14, which is where I would go, I think there are plenty of bigs at 27 that you could look at. To me, I think Vernon Carey out of Duke would be an excellent fit. You know, I think defensively is the concern with Vernon Carey, but you know, a lot of people think Vernon Carey and immediately think Jahlil Okafor, and I don't know if Vernon Carey is the statue that Jahlil Okafor was coming out of Duke. He's in better shape. I think he's a better athlete Jahlil Okafor has ever been. So I feel like he can be a little bit more of a threat defensively than Jahlil Okafor. And while I don't think he has the skill level you look for did coming out of college, I mean the guy has a tank. Again, you're talking about size. Vernon Carey is a guy I think could come in right away and be you know really a really good contributor, solid contributor for an NBA team from day one. He kind of gives you what Enes Kanter gives you offensively, and I think he kind of gives you what Enes Kanter gives you. But I think has more stretch potential than a guy like Enes Kanter. So I would look at Vernon Carey a lot if I were the Celtics. And Isaiah Stewart, a guy we talked about in our Knicks video, would also be a good fit, I think, for Boston. Again, both guys, Carey and Stewart, high pedigree guys coming out of high school. And, you know, I think the Celtics have always been a team that values the entire scouting process, past, even beyond a guy's one-and-done season. So, would they be higher on those guys than maybe, you know, some other guys that have maybe risen out of the college ranks, like a Paul Reed from DePaul or Sadiq Bey or guys like that, where it's like, oh yeah, you know, they weren't highly touted coming out of high school, but really emerged in their college careers. Those are guys I would look at. And then to me, another guy, if they are going to go with the wing, we haven't mentioned the wing at all, but if they are going to go with a wing, I think a guy that would fit their profile well is Cassius Stanley out of Duke. Cassius Stanley, we haven't really talked about him at all on this YouTube channel, but he's one of my favorite prospects in this draft. You know, I think the elite athleticism is serious. He's a little older for your common freshman. I think he's going to be 21 by the time the season starts. But to to me, like, oh, he's 21 years old. Like, doesn't mean he's not ancient.
Yeah, exactly.
Still plenty of room for growth. The athleticism, again, elite. Like, we're talking, I don't want to say Zion level, but it's pretty close. And he's got a baseline for a skill set that could translate to the NBA. He's not NBA ready right now, but his jump shot is improving, and I think his form suggests that if he works on it, he could absolutely be a real shooter at the NBA level. He competes defensively, and he's not a guy. A lot of people thought he'd come into Duke and kind of be Hollywood because he's coming from California. California guy that Duke haven't always worked. He was a high-profile guy coming out of high school, and a lot of draft people and a lot of recruiting people even kind of thought he was overrated. That he was a lot of dunks and stuff, but he really emerged as, honestly, he might have been Duke's best player outside of Trey Jones.
Yeah.
And, he had a lot of performances where, it was, Vernon Carey didn't show up. Vernon Carey was the best player on the team, but if Vernon Carey didn't show up, he kind of had to pick up the slack. So, I think Cassius Stanley is a guy. It's not really a Celtics specific pick. It's just, if you're talking about a guy that I really like in this draft, the Celtics have 4 draft picks. I would be willing to waste one on Cassius Stanley and say, look, mold this guy into a guy I think could be an NBA starting shooting guard.
I definitely get the excitement over Stanley. They are a little stockpiled at the wing, but like you said, you got 3 or 4 picks or whatever, like, so you can maneuver how you want. And in regards to the kid from Duke, Vernon Carey or Stewart, I think on the surface you may look at them and say, okay, but do they fit the athletic profile of the kind of bigs that Brad Stevens likes, or they need even? But they made Enes Kanter work, like they made that work, and I don't know if you'll have him next year. So Kanter in a pinch has been able to get them some inside scoring that they don't get from anywhere else. So could one of those guys, they're not going to be as good as Kanter in terms of scoring, but could one of those guys fill that role where maybe you sacrifice a little bit of your pick and roll defense for that? Maybe you do.
And one of those guys, like, I feel like it really also depends on how you feel about Robert Williams. Because Robert Williams, if you really like him, I don't know what his contract's like. I feel like he's going to come up soon because he's been in the league for a little bit now. But, if you like Robert Williams, it might be time to kind of unleash him a little bit as opposed to getting another guy that fits his profile. I like the Precious Achiuwa pick because I think he's a guy that can play with all of these guys.
Exactly, which is why I liked him.
Step on the toes of a Robert Williams or a Tice or Enes Kanter, but he also gives you something that you certainly need.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I liked him, because he's a jack of all trades. If you need some length, throw in Precious Achiuwa. You need some defense, Precious Achiuwa. Like no matter what the situation is or what the lineup is, he can find a way to make it work, and within all the Celtics quote unquote weaknesses. So that's why I think he makes the most sense at 14 if you can get him. But what do you guys think the Celtics should do with all these picks? Should you trade up potentially? I think when Kendall was talking about some of those guards, if they're not there at 26, I think there's certainly a chance to maybe package those back end picks to move up. Would you do that? Let us know. Leave a comment on your draft strategy for the Boston Celtics. Of course, like this video and subscribe to our channel, New Generation Media, to find more virtual NBA draft room sessions. But for this is going to do it for now. For Kendall, I'm EJ. Take it easy, guys. Peace.